Hey, it's Ted here. I'm going to do a quick video to show how to replace the headlight lens on a Volkswagen Passat. I'm going to be working on my girlfriend's 2002 Volkswagen Passat with a 1.8 liter turbo in it. I believe this will cover numerous years, 2000 or earlier through a lot, so I think it'll be pretty handy for a lot of people if they're looking into it. This isn't just the bulb replacement, this is the full lens replacement that we're going to go through, and I'm going to show how to do it on the driver side lens. So I ordered a new lens for her, got it off of Amazon, which is a pretty good deal, about $88 I think is what it was, and I'm a Prime member so I got a free shipping on it. So the first thing I did, just double check, make sure that it looks like it is the correct thing. Sometimes these aftermarket parts, sometimes they don't actually match up, so the quick look around appears to match up correctly. So what had happened with hers is actually one of the adjustments to aim the lens, or the bulb inside the lens, had broken, so that's why we're replacing the whole unit. It doesn't seem like you can actually service that individually, so that's what we're going to do. Here is my girlfriend's car. So the lens that we're going to be replacing is this one here. As you can see, it's old, it's yellow. I've actually resurfaced the lens numerous times, but it still continues to oxidize and everything like that, but that's fine. To get this kit out, we're going to actually have to remove a good bit of the front end here. That sounds very intimidating, but it really won't take a lot of time. It's actually some of the first steps involved in moving the, I think what they call the front carrier into service lock position. It sounds very grandiose, but having done it now a couple of times, it's really not very difficult. What it's going to involve is, it's going to involve taking the grille off here. It's going to entail taking this front fascia off. They actually don't call this the bumper. The bumper is actually a metal bar that's actually behind this, per their terminology. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. The way that gets started is actually by down here in the wheel well. Let's see if we can get the light on here. Okay, we actually have a couple of screws here. You can see right here, there's one here, one here, down lower, one right here, and then there's actually one that goes vertically up, connecting the piece of fascia here with the fender, and that's right in this little cutout right here. There are all these little Torx screws. There are 4 of them that we actually need to remove. We don't have to do this little junction here. This is fine to stay together. And actually, you do need to disconnect the shroud, remove the shroud from underneath the car, but that's already done on her, so not going through that step. So the first thing is to remove those screws, and we'll get to that. Just so you know, those screws in the wheel well all come out using a T20 Torx. I'm lucky, I've got a little pneumatic wrench, that little 1/4-inch pneumatic that I can use to remove those, because it is a little bit cramped. Some people find it easier to remove the tire to get to those, but with this it's pretty easy just to pop them out. So there are 4 on each side, and I'm going to remove all of those. I've got all 4 of those screws out. Now the next thing to do, even with the shroud removed underneath, you need to get down here and remove this screw from right there. Okay, just an easy flathead screw. I've got all 4 of those screws out. Now the next thing to do, even with the shroud removed underneath, you need to get down here and remove this screw from right there. Okay, just an easy flathead screw. Now that I've got all 8 screws from within the fender wells and the screw from the center of the fascia underneath the car done, I'm going to remove this part of the grille. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to remove these 2 Torx head screws, which are, they're T30s, I think, T30 Torx. just going to pop those out. And then one of the things that's tricky is I'm going to actually need to disconnect this hood release. And that, you can see down in there, is actually, the way it kind of works is that there are pins that kind of stick out like this, and then the hood release actually slides in like a fork around it, sliding on to both of those pins. So what I'm going to end up doing, and there's a little metal clip that you can maybe kind of see in here that fits around them. So I'm going to need to pop up the clip, and then I'm going to spread the fork of the hood release using a wide plier. Just going to twist it gently, and that'll disengage it from the two pins that are like that. Okay. Now, one thing that you can do when putting this back together to make it a little easier, because this does move around, is I'll actually end up using a pair of vice grips that will clip right here like this, just connecting on the top of this little part of the hood release. And that holds it in place, and that just, when trying to use two hands to try to feed that fork back onto those pins, it's very helpful to just have a pair of vice grips or a small clamp, something like that, holding that in place so that it doesn't jiggle around. It's a little easier to work with. Okay, I got the two screws disengaged, and I got the hood release disengaged. The next thing to do is to pull this piece of grill up. Now, the important thing to understand is that this is held in by these little tabs here. You can see this one, and still have one engaged here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to end up just putting a screwdriver in. The tab kind of works like a V, so I'm just going to push a screwdriver in to help close the tab together so that it'll pop up. Okay, got that part of the grill removed. The next thing to do is to remove the retaining screws that are holding the fascia in place, and that's easy enough just by removing these 4 screws right there. Again, those are all just T30s. Okay, as you can see, the fascia, all I did was remove the 4 screws, slid the fascia forward, and then just dropped it down. Be careful, because there are some wires still connected here to run some of the other turn signals and so on. So I have not disengaged those right now. If you were going to go on and put the car into the carrier service lock position, you'd need to disconnect those as well before you move the fascia completely away from the car. At this point, you can actually see the true bumper now, which is right here. Okay. Next thing we're going to do, we don't have to remove that for this process, but that gives you an idea where it is if you're moving along into doing the full service lock position task. But all we need to do is remove this protective piece here as well, which again, just T30 screws here. You can see it in there. So 1, 2, 3 in the center, 4, 5 on the other side. Okay, so now nothing else is blocking the lens housing from actually coming out, but we do need to remove a couple of screws to let it come out of the car. We're going to remove this guy here, and then inside there are 2 tricky ones right down there, and then one that's just a little bit tougher to see, located right there. Okay, there are all those T20s, so easy enough to get. I think you could also use an 8mm to get down in there from this side. This guy actually using like a universal head and extension a little easier. I think it is an 8mm that you could get at a little easier. I also need to disconnect this wiring harness. I find that it's easier to give you a little more room to do some of this. I don't know that you really need to, but you could take this housing off as well, which is just held on by 2 clips underneath. Okay, so now nothing else is blocking the lens housing from actually coming out, but we do need to remove a couple of screws to let it come out of the car. We're going to remove this guy here, and then inside there are 2 tricky ones right down there, and then one that's just a little bit tougher to see, located right there. Okay, there are all those T20s, so easy enough to get. I think you could also use an 8mm to get down in there from this side. This guy actually using like a universal head and extension a little easier. I think it is an 8mm that you could get at a little easier. I also need to disconnect this wiring harness. I find that it's easier to give you a little more room to do some of this. I don't know that you really need to, but you could take this housing off as well, which is just held on by 2 clips underneath. Okay, I got all 4 of those bolts out, and I disconnect this wiring harness, and now the lens should come forward, just like that. And there it is. And that's what it takes to remove the lens out of the Passat. The installation's simply the reversal of the removal. Again, the one trick to it, if anything, is getting that hood release latch hooked back in. So think about using something to hold that little guy in position and have at it. Good luck. Hope this helped.